we have a very simple one here of a group of names that we want to separate. We have the first and last name, and we'd like to separate those two. Now, I'd like to create a column with these first names. So I simply start typing. I'm going to start with Abby. Then I have here Arnold. Then I have Bob Merck. Then Jack. Now it's figured out my pattern here, and it comes up with a suggestion, formula suggestions. We think we can fill these cells using a formula, and that really would be isolating just that first name here. And you can see the same would be the case with every one of these cells in this column. So I click on the check mark, and here you can see it did a very good job of separating that cell, but it uses the formula and it shares the formula with me. Now, this is a very good thing, this particular method, and the reason being that that means I can add to that other column. Like, say, if I type in Mark Simon. Now, if I carry down that formula, because now there's a formula being used here, you'll see that it will do the same thing. It has Mark, you see, if we do that. Now, let's do the last name. Okay, I start typing in. And you have to make sure, of course, that you're typing in exactly what's there. And there, by this point, it figured out my pattern. So again, I would do the same thing. Again, you can see it's using a formula. I'd click check. Now again, let's say, for example, here, if I put in, you'll see that if this formula here, these formulas are carried down, it will divide those two. So you can see that this is a very usable function. It can be used in so many different ways. So we can see that Smart Fill is very useful. And the real advantage here is this formula, because as we mentioned before, it's easy to carry down that formula or extend that formula and add to that list so that your list is now dynamic. However, there is a drawback, and that is that there are times when you have to deal with data that is a bit more complex or is a bit more inconsistent. You see, as you saw here, the Google Sheets was able to figure out what I was doing because there was a particular pattern every time, and it's able to figure out that pattern. There are times when you have data that doesn't seem to show any particular pattern, but you have to separate it. And in a case like that, you may have to use a different method. If you were to take a look at lesson 9, where I discussed this more so, how you can actually separate data. And it doesn't have to be consistent data. It just needs to have a similar division between it, like a hyphen or a space or whatever particular point that you can find that separates that data within that cell. You can separate it that way. But that's using a different method. So I would recommend looking at lesson 9 to be able to get a pretty good understanding of that. So I hope this has been helpful. Please, if you find this information to be helpful to you, go ahead and subscribe, because there are more lessons coming up, of course, in the future.